Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Deep to left field, going back is Locastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always. Continuing on today, we are firing on all cylinders here as we continue our college football preview series. We're rolling. We're only 24 days out now from the season as of the recording of this on July 31st. Tomorrow we wake up, it's August, and August 24th is our first football game. That means something on the college field with Florida State and Georgia Tech. So really excited. We're getting closer and closer. Today we continue our series diving into the SEC with a new team to the SEC, one of the biggest names, biggest brands in all of college football, and they decided to realign from the Big 12 to the SEC, and that's the Oklahoma Sooners going into year 3 under Brent Venables. Obviously them and Texas, two longtime rivals, joining forces to go over to the SEC and just make that conference even more of a beast than it is. Oklahoma has been, at least in my lifetime, 24 years old, a football power. That's what I think of them as. And I feel like their move to the SEC has been talked about much less than Texas. And Texas, I think, gets the recency kind of bias. But Texas, in my lifetime, Oklahoma has been a much better football program, in my opinion, at least over the last decade, than Texas has. I mean, Oklahoma has been to the playoff a couple times when Lincoln Riley was there. They're looking to kind of right the ship now under Brent Venables and begin this new era here in the SEC. So I'm really intrigued to see how they fare in this move. This is a team that has a lot of moving pieces from last year. So we'll get into all that, get into a little bit about the head coach, or 2023 season, the offense, the defense, and we'll give you my schedule prediction and my prediction on their over-under win total according to DraftKings. So head coach Brent Venables, he enters year 2 here at Oklahoma, was known as the longtime DC for Dabo Swinney at Clemson, won a couple national championships there as a defensive coordinator, 16-10 in his 2 years so far at Oklahoma. He did get a 6-year extension this offseason, and that was a move that I was a little bit critical about. Year 1, they were only 6-7, I believe. Last year, they wound up going 10-3. So definitely a jump up from year 1 to year 2. But still, to give him a 6-year extension, that must have been a pretty good negotiation by him and his agent. Give me a little bit more sense of security to build this team. But they're showing a lot of faith in him, giving him that extension as they move into the SEC. It's a move that maybe I would have waited to do next year, see how he fares in year 1, because I do think there could be some struggles and some hiccups as they move over into a new conference, because I think the biggest thing with realignment, and it's an episode we'll get to next with USC, you've built your roster previously through recruiting, through the transfers to compete in the conference that you played. Like USC in the Pac-12, you never really had to be a super physical squad, but you had to have athletes. You had to be able to have the skill players to go out there and put up a lot of points. Oklahoma kind of in the same degree in the Big 12, not the most physical league, physical conference, but you had to be able to go out there and win shootouts. Oklahoma now going to the SEC, you need some big boys. You need help in the trenches. You need that beef up front to essentially take your team and take your program to the next level. I mean, just look at Alabama and look at Georgia and all the dominance they've had. They've always been good on the offensive and defensive lines. When you look at Oklahoma, I think the two biggest weaknesses you could probably look at on this team right now, the offensive and defensive line. When you're going from a conference that it's not nearly as important as the SEC, and then you transition into the SEC, and those are kind of your two weak links, it's a major question mark for me. It gives me major reason to have some skepticism and pessimism going into this season for the Oklahoma Sooners. So does Brent Venables deserve that extension already? I don't know, but definitely should have jumped there in year 2, getting that team to 10-3. We'll go over the 2023 season. As we said, 10-3. They went 7-2. That tied for second in the Big 12. We're able to knock off Texas in the regular season. That was an awesome game, 34-30. That was Texas's only loss of the regular season before obviously losing in the college football playoff semis to Washington. But they also lost the bowl game to Arizona 38-24. A lot of moving parts. Dylan Gabriel transferred out by then. Some other guys hit the portal. Some other guys were opt-outs as well. Won 7 of their 10 games, though, last year, Oklahoma, by double digits. They lost their 2 regular season games, excluding the bowl game, by a combined 12 points. So even in those 2 losses, those were, close, hard-fought games. I didn't realize how good they actually were, kind of going back over the schedule and the statistics last year, watching them live and stuff. I wasn't really that impressed. I'm amazed, but 10-2 in the regular season, and with those 2 losses come by a combined 12 points, they were a team that, the ball goes a different way 1 or 2 different times, maybe that they were even a team in the playoff. But those back-to-back losses against Kansas and Oklahoma State, kind of towards the middle to back half of their season, really hurt them, and I think hurt their eyes and the views of everyone in terms of how legit they were or not. But the offense was awesome last year. And with Brett Venables leading the way, as we talked about, the former DC at Clemson, you would think the defense would be kind of the calling card of this team. Maybe it transitions over to that this year and going forward. But the offense was awesome last year. They ranked top 10 in the 4 major offensive categories of total offense, scoring offense, rushing offense, and passing offense. Defense wasn't great, but they were better than 2022, where they really struggled in that year 1 under Venables. So this is a team that is going to have big expectations going to the SEC. I talked about in my episode with Clemson, where the standard at Clemson was built into national championships, college football playoff appearances. Oklahoma has built the standard of, college football playoff appearances, especially now with an expanded 12-team playoff, one of the biggest brands in all of college football. I don't want an excuse that you're going to the SEC. You went to the SEC to be with the best, to play with the best. Sure, the financial side of it helps as well. But still, the standard at Oklahoma should still be competing for SEC titles, competing for national titles, competing for college football playoff berths. I don't know why anyone's kind of taking a step back and it's like, oh, it's okay, they're in a rebuild. No, it's Oklahoma. That's what we do. That's what the expectation is. Same thing I kind of talked about with Villanova basketball. It's like, oh, well, they're going on to a rebuild with Neptune. They're looking to you might not even be a Villanova basketball fan listening to this, but that the expectation at Villanova is to compete for Final Fours and national championships. That's what Jay Wright made it into. It's not like, oh, okay, well, Kyle Neptune's here now, we'll take a step back. Same thing at Oklahoma. Like, what they built there under Stoops, under Lincoln Riley, shouldn't change the expectations at all under Venables and going into the SEC. So I think there should be a ton of pressure on him. I wouldn't have given him that extension right away, but here they are. They have to live with it, and they must have a lot of faith and confidence in him going forward. But when we fast forward now to the 2024 season and look at this team on the offensive side of the ball, obviously you look at the quarterback spot first, and it starts with Dylan Gabriel transferring to Oregon. Gabriel, probably he's the Heisman favorite right now at Oregon, plus 750 to win the Heisman Trophy this year. Had a great year last year leading this Oklahoma team, but that's a really valuable piece that goes in. You slide in a former 5-star recruit, Jackson Arnold, there to take over the reins at quarterback. He's got big shoes to fill in, but they kind of said to Dylan Gabriel, all right, we're going to hand it over to this guy now. You can go find a home elsewhere, and we're going to let Jackson Arnold run the show. They think that's the best move for the program going forward. Last year, the Oklahoma offense ranked 4th in scoring offense at 41.7 points per game. They ranked 7th in rushing offense, 6th in passing offense, and 3rd in total offense at 507 yards per game. A real elite bunch last year. Arnold, as we said, a former 5-star recruit, gets the keys to the car. They're going to look to lead this group to a top 10 offense again this year. Will that happen? I don't think so. I think they're definitely going to take somewhat of a step back, especially moving to the SEC and with the really tough schedule that we'll get into. But this offense only returns 4 starters from last year. And in Arnold's 1 start last year in the bowl game, he had 4 turnovers. So that's an area that he certainly is going to have to clean up. And my major red flag for this Oklahoma team this year, we talked about it on the offensive and defensive line. The offensive line lost all 5 starters from last year. So that is a super big change as well, going to a much more physical conference with much more talented players up front on that defensive line. So it could take some time to get rolling, but games against Temple, Houston, and Tulane to open up the season, I think that should provide this Oklahoma squad with some time to gel, give Arnold some time to get his legs under him and get accustomed to SEC football and get this offensive line rolling. Anytime you have to roll in 5 new starting offensive linemen, never played the position before, but you hear it from linemen all the time. It takes time for that to build that roster kind of continuity and trust all those guys up front that you're playing next to. So that's going to be a huge question mark for this Oklahoma team going into the season. The coordinator, too, last year that coordinated that top 10 offense, Jeff Lebby, he goes to Mississippi State to be the head coach. So now they have a new OC in Seth Luttrell. He's running the show on offense now. The offense has some explosive playmakers, though, and this should be a fun group. I think we'll get a lot of kind of wow moments and wow plays, but also a bunch of head scratchers as well, as they have, a young, exciting quarterback in Arnold. It's going to take some time to adjust, especially playing at this level and getting thrown in to the SEC right away. But with the explosive playmakers on offense, it should be a fun group. At the receiver spot, they have Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, and Brennan Thompson. The three of those guys all average at least 20 yards per catch in 2023. So this is a group that can fly, and with the ball in their hands, they can make some plays. Watch out for Purdue transfer wide receiver Deion Burks as well. Real speedster. He had 5 catches for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns in the spring game. Both those touchdowns were 50-plus yard touchdowns as well. So some real explosion there in the spring game. Deion Burks, a Purdue transfer, showed. Watch out for him to be one of the kind of breakout stars in the SEC this year. And then look at the running game as well. As we said, they ranked in the top 10 in rushing, passing, total offense, and scoring offense. Running back Gavin Sawchuk comes back. He really emerged over the second half of the season last year, ended the year with 5 straight games of 100-plus rushing yards. So one of the potential premier backs there in the SEC. And they also bring in running back Taylor Tatum as well. He was regarded as one of the top recruits this year in the entire class, but most specifically at the running back spot, was viewed as one of, if not the top running back prospect in the country this year, coming into his freshman year. So the skill guys are there. The quarterback with the talent is certainly there. He's got to keep care of the ball, as we said in that one start against Arizona, 4 turnovers. Arizona was playing awesome down the stretch last year, so maybe that just says a little bit about how good that they were. But if Jackson Arnold is able to get up to speed quickly and these skill guys perform as we're expecting them, it's going to come down to the offensive line in front of them and whether or not they're able to protect. But Sawchuk at running back, Tatum at running back, this is going to be a really exciting young group of playmakers. Can the offensive line protect, though, will really determine how good this group can be in their first year in the SEC. Now we go to the defensive side, which is Venables' baby, his unit that he should be, striving to make into one of, if not the elite defense in the SEC. But defense, much more inferior unit last year than the offense, but these guys did take a big jump in their production and their stats from 2022 to 2023. They returned 6 starters this year as well, and like we were saying, hope to take another leap here. Very strong against the pass last year. That was their calling card on defense. They ranked 17th in the country, only allowing 118.6 yards per game. Defensive coordinator, though, Ted Roof was let go, and he was replaced by a pair of co-defensive coordinators, Zach Alley and Jay Valet. But Venables, with his defensive background, should have a lot of say in the schematics and the personnel that's out in the field on this defense as well. One note, I think, is to monitor really closely on this, and I read this in my magazine, my Lindy's College Football Preview magazine. For this defense, the average weight of their interior linemen is only 291 pounds. That could be a major area that this team gets exploited in the SEC up front when you're playing the likes of Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, and especially LSU. All future offensive linemen, future NFL offensive linemen, part of those groups. So those interior linemen could get picked apart, and that could be one of the, the culture shock moments, the oh wow type of moments that Oklahoma's like, wow, this isn't the Big 12 anymore. We definitely need to go out there and add some beef next offseason, whether it's in the portal, recruiting. We need to emphasize getting bigger on the defensive line. And the offensive line, I think, could see that as well. But they did bring in 5-star defensive lineman David Stone. He's a freshman, first 5-star interior defensive lineman since 2008 when Gerald McCoy was playing for Oklahoma. So that's a big addition there. I don't know how big of an impact player he'll be as a freshman, but he'll definitely be there in the rotation and looked at as kind of like a building block there on the line there in the SEC going forward for Oklahoma. The linebacker group, though, maybe the best linebacker group in the SEC, and that's some pretty lofty praise when you have the likes of Georgia and Alabama who just seem to churn out NFL linebackers year after year. But Danny Stutzman, he has 267 career tackles in his 3-year career as a starter. One of, if not the best linebackers in the country, was a 3rd-team All-American last year. I expect him to be a preseason potential 1st-team All-American linebacker this year. Really good there in the middle. I think the linebacker unit on this team will be the strong suit of the defense, but the secondary was really strong last year, 17th against the pass in the country. They should be really strong again. The defense still had its woes, but the secondary was certainly a strong suit. They've returned 4-year starter Woody Washington and Gentry Williams, who's another returning starter. So 2 returning pieces there, some continuity. And then with an offense that I think might take some time to get moving, it's really imperative that this defense takes a leap this year and can kind of hold down the fort in the early going. So look for the Oklahoma defense, I think, to take a step up and the offense to take a step back this year as they transition into the SEC. We'll get into my schedule preview now, my schedule breakdown, as I bring up my screen for this Oklahoma team. So we've talked about it, not overly optimistic. I think it's going to take some time to adjust, but I do like the first 3 games out of the chute. The Temple game, I think they're like 46.5-point favorites. Houston, who's at the first year under Willie Fritz, I think he's going to get them going. Actually, the former Tulane coach who they have in the next game, but he's going to get them going, but I think it will take some time. And then Tulane, I think that's going to be a win as well. 3 straight games at home. Week 4, Tennessee, that's going to be an awesome one. Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback, they're calling that the Heupel Bowl. He's coming back to Oklahoma to coach for the first time as a head coach. That's going to be a raucous atmosphere. That's going to be an awesome game. I got Oklahoma winning that game. So I got them starting out 4-0. Going to Auburn, I'm going to give that a loss. Everyone in the SEC at Media Day was really just kind of praising Auburn and how hard of a place that is to play there. It was kind of like a out of left field type statement with all these elite schools. I heard so much about how Auburn is such a tough place to play. So maybe Oklahoma riding their high horse a little bit, goes into Auburn, drops that game. I have them losing to Texas. I don't think Texas, they beat Texas back-to-back years. Texas, national title contender again this season. I have them beating South Carolina. Then I have them losing to Ole Miss at Ole Miss. That's going to be a tough one. Obviously, I have them beating Maine there, but this is a really tough stretch to end the season. And I think we can make an argument that Oklahoma is right up there with Florida in terms of the 1 or 2, 3, top 5 toughest schedules in the entire country. But going to Missouri, not going to be an easy game. I have a loss there. Getting to host Alabama. Who knows what Alabama's going to be this year, but still, I'll give the benefit of the doubt to this Alabama team. I think that they have more depth and more talent in the trenches right now than Oklahoma. So I'll give them Oklahoma a loss there, and then I'm going to give them a loss at LSU as well. So getting out to a 4-0 start, but then the only wins after that, are South Carolina at home and Maine. So I have this Oklahoma team struggling in year 1 in the SEC. I've been hearing some people that are a little higher on them than I am, but that schedule is really tough, and I just think they're going to kind of get not abused, but taken advantage of on the offensive and defensive lines in the early going. And it's going to take some time to build that up. And that's what the transfer portal is for, going out and being able to get guys like that. Brett Venables will kind of be able to see that up close. But with that average interior defensive lineman only being 291 pounds, you don't really have any of those big boys to compete with some of those massive centers and guards that you're going to be going against every single week. So I think this could be a really fun and exciting team playing some super fun and exciting games. Like that Ole Miss game, I could see being a major shootout. The Texas game, obviously, being a major shootout. The Tennessee game being a major shootout. But you got to remember, you got a really young quarterback here with little to no college experience, no SEC experience. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve, and 5 new starting offensive linemen, that's a big change as well. So Oklahoma's win total at DraftKings right now actually sits at 7.5. I think I'm actually going to wind up taking the under on this. I'm a big believer in your play in the trenches will really determine how far you go. And as we said too, young quarterback, a coach that I think is still going to be adjusting to playing at this type of level in the SEC. And that final 3-game stretch is really, really tough for this team. So I'm actually going to make that an official play of mine. Oklahoma under 7.5 wins this year, and hopefully see some improvements, I guess, to both sides of the ball. The defensive side of the ball and the offensive side. I think it's going to be more of a learning year, but the defense, I think we're going to see step up from last year. But I just think this is more of a build to next year type of thing. And you better hope Brett Venables is able to kind of figure it out, because you already committed to him for the next 6 years, I think into 2029. So that'll do it for this episode of the Beef Front podcast. Thank you everyone for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.